Welcome to Get Your Mind Right, the podcast where merchant services, digital marketing, and personal growth collide. Tune in for real talk, fresh insights, and the motivation to level up.
Hey, good morning, Dawson.
Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good.
Welcome back to Get Your Mind Right.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, what number does this make for you?
4 or 5, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We had one, first one was like a couple part series, so I think this is like the third or fourth subject.
Okay.
I think third subject.
Okay. Do you know why I asked you to be on today?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay. Well, as you know, I'm always watching, always listening, and I heard you talk about level 2 and level 3 processing some time ago. So, a little bit down the weeds for our visitors or our listeners that are mostly focused on digital, but I think it is really important that our folks that focus on merchant, and really our digital folks, to get acquainted with this, for them, if nothing more out of today, to get really a good understanding of what the opportunity is here.
Yep.
So Dawson, let's really start, let's aim this first part of the dialogue at those folks and give us a 30,000 foot view of what level 2 and level 3 processing is.
Yep, so the 30,000 foot overview is the much easier one right now.
Of course.
So that's basically when you submit more data for those certain business transactions on certain B2B cards, not all of them, just like a very small set of them. Those transactions can get a lower interchange rate because you had a gateway that could submit the additional info, and most of which, of course, we want to do through an automated template as much as possible.
So you're not talking about what the ISO or processor's markup is. You're talking about their costs for that transaction as dictated by Visa and MasterCard.
Correct.
Okay, so why is it then that I get a lower cost rate on those level 2, level 3 transactions, say over a swiped B2C transaction?
Mm-hmm. So for those, in your swiped B2C transaction, or we'll say at least say dipped where they're using their chip card, could be lower than the B2B one anyway, depending on the type of card. So that's the fun thing too, is there's not one right or wrong way which one's more or less expensive, because there's a million factors. But why they're getting those lowered rates, like in the B2B world, is they're submitting more data. So whenever Visa and MasterCard receive more data, they receive that as less risky, and they can lower their interchange rate. Versus if they're, it's a key entered card and they submit no address verification, no CVV, obviously something like that's going to go to a non-qual rate. So that's going to either make it increase or decrease the rate depending on how much data you're submitting.
So are there terminals out there that will support level 2 and level 3 processing?
Right now, so the terminals themselves, if you use a card present solution, you can get up to level 2 if they put in the additional data, which does not happen for most of them.
Gotcha.
But card not present with the virtual terminals, yes. So like Deja Vu and Optimizer are the ones we use the most right now.
Now you're talking about, so let's recap this where we are so far. So if I'm the merchant, I get a automatic lower cost structure by virtue of using level 2 and level 3 processing, because that's less risk for the processor and they're willing to pass that savings on to me. Okay.
Correct.
Now, tell me what that order of magnitude of the savings is and why a merchant would care about that.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of them, of course, it depends on card, because there's like 6 or 7 different card types for both Visa and MasterCard that could apply to it. So most of them are around 70 basis points. If you're taking them from like their standard rate to like the best rate for level 3, generally it's around 70 basis points on average, but it varies because most of them are anywhere from like 1.9 to like 2.25 for the best rate, which is about to change again too with the new rules that are coming into effect this October.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. So
Okay.
there's a lot of new rules that are coming into place, and there's some changes too.
Anything you feel like sharing today?
Yes. So couple things that are going to change when it comes to the world of like the automated template. So like we talk about in our trainings a lot, the automated template is huge. So that way your merchant does not have to submit the additional data every single time. So Visa has a new program to kind of sort those out for ones that are built with what people call the ones and zeros template, right? So like that's the old way people used to do it. And back in the day when people really started getting into this, that was just the average way that everybody did it. Everybody knew it was done that way. Visa knew it was done that way. So now they have an AI program. It's the Visa CEDP program. I don't remember the exact acronym to that. Commercial Enhanced Data Program or something like that.
Okay. Well, that clears it up.
Yeah, it's basically their AI program. So what
Okay.
it's doing is it's checking the validity of the data, which in turn I think is a good thing long term for the industry. More so than just having blind templates. So like what we've seen so far on most of them, because they started this in I think April of 2025, and then this October 2025 is whenever the new rules are, or I guess second wave of rules are going into place. So then there's going to be downgrades and stuff if they're submitting like templated data for everything for like item descriptor code and commodity code, unit of measurement and that kind of stuff. So that's what I've seen them crack down on so far, and particularly the tax rate has changed too. So like before they could use tax rate as little as 0.01%, and now it has to be at least 0.1%.
So when you say tax rate, you mean sales tax?
Correct. So it's tricky though too.
Okay, how's that come into play?
So it depends on the data that you have to submit for it. So like some of the data you submit for a level 3 transaction, this is like what we used to build solely in the template, and you'd never have to see it, is like line item descriptor code, commodity code. I think it has invoice number on there and stuff like that. And tax is one of those items. That's normally the one where it's either going to work or not work. So if people skip the tax section, then a lot of times they don't get level 3. Now what I've ran into, and I'm trying to help a few people with right now, let's say the merchant doesn't have sales tax on their stuff based on the industry or whatever services they provide. So with those, it's more interesting because now it's like, okay, I have to list a tax rate to be able to get the correct interchange rate, but yet there's actually not really sales tax on this. So some of the gateways have the capability to do that without affecting the total of the transaction.
Gotcha. Let's pause here for a second and let's rewind. One of the things you start off with is you talked about part of the reason that merchant realizes a lower cost structure is it is a lower risk transaction because Visa and MasterCard are getting that data. Now you mentioned a couple. You mentioned a CVV code and I think a CVS.
AVS.
CVS, that's the pharmacy.
Yes.
So that is a pharmacy that you can get your prescriptions and also get a lower rate on your processing, by the way. That is a thing. You can fact check me on that. But in general, talk about when you say additional data, tell me what that looks like.
So most of that, like up until now, everything was happening in the background. So like you didn't have to see it at all. You still ran your transaction as normal, as like just a regular B2C transaction. You had no idea that was going to happen in the background. So now they have to add, like, update the line item description and like the item code and stuff like that, and then also like the tax rate. So they have like I think 5 or 6 boxes to update, especially when they're optimized. I remember that's how the template is now, compared to like before. You didn't have to redo that every time. So like it's checking to see like if it's the same thing submitted over and over again. And then like Visa's already provided that to us of like who's been flagged and who's not, for like who's doing this right and who's not before the downgrades have went into place. So like we've notified our existing ones, and then we're taking that information to turn around and make sure we're doing everything right in the future. So like it's very few things you have to add now even to do it 100% correctly. But it's not the same.
So put a bow on this issue and let's just lay it out there what the gateways were doing to really. Yeah, I really feel like they were circumventing the rules, not just the rules, but the spirit of it as well.
Like they knew the rule was you had to submit the data, but it didn't have to be correct. So now the gateways are creating the way to where it's like it's part template, part not template.
Right.
But you're having, and so it's like, your information as the merchant, like your merchant information, that's not going to change. You still have to submit that every time. But it's like the stuff that will change, you update it, and it's a couple little boxes. So it's like your description codes and stuff like that.
I just think it's so odd. I mean, Visa, they literally have the smartest people and systems in the world, and they knew this was going on, and it was just, people were just entering nonsense, but since it checked the box of that box being filled out, Visa was letting it go through. I never understood why they let that go on for so long.
Yeah, I don't either. Like, it made sense if they were to do it, like, originally, but I mean, this has been going on for years and years.
Years. And they've certainly been aware of it since the get-go.
They probably didn't have a way to check it other than just having an AI program to run through it.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine the lift of, like, having to find people to go in there and check that data.
There's no way.
I mean, it'd be almost impossible.
No way.
Unless you did some at random, but, like, you'd never be able to do all of them.
Can you imagine that hiring program? We need 10,000 Geruses.
It'd be tough.
It'd be tough. Be a challenge. Dawson, you talked about automation being the preferred way of handling these transactions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by automation?
Same thing I was talking about with the template. So like using the template as much as you can, so that way it's going to automate as many boxes as you can. The ones that are going to be duplicated over and over again, have that built in the background. I mean, there's no reason to have to submit that data over and over again if it never changes. And the only thing you're going to have to submit now are the boxes that will change from transaction to transaction.
Okay. So I happen to know that you're a football fan, and that you talk about you're extolling the virtues of this automating process versus a manual. You have any kind of football metaphor for that?
I feel like what it is when you're looking at the automation, it's kind of like running a good offense, right? A good explosive offense. It's when everything's moving in the right direction, why would you go back and make things additionally hard on yourselves, right? You're going to practice what's going to make you perfect, right? Practice how you play as well. So you have to be able to be ready for the automation, have the motion going right on your football offense, and then your play's going to work. You also have to believe in yourself that it is going to work, and not that, I don't know if this play's going to work or not. You have to still believe in your heart that it's going to work 100% every single time.
Well, you bring up a great point here. So a rep that is preparing correctly for this and is forward-looking versus someone who's not stuck in the past, how are their approaches going to be different on this?
So the ones that are forward-looking, obviously it's a lot easier to recognize everything. Right, even when back to the football example, if you're on offense and you're the quarterback, you're going to be trying to read the defense and see, okay, what's about to come at me? How much pressure is coming? Is this an all-out blitz? No, it's a 3-man rush or 4-man rush. Okay, we're going to be okay. And you have to be able to perceive those things versus thinking, man, the defense has just been coming down on me all day today, right? Those are the two different mentalities there between someone who's forward-thinking and someone who is just worried about what happened earlier. So when you look at it back on the card processing side, whenever you're looking at it going forward, you have to have a solution to the problem, not just complain about the problem. Because if you're looking at it in the past and you're just complaining, it used to be way different, it was a lot easier, you're really not going to fix anything, and ultimately you're going to get to fourth down and have to punt.
Yeah.
Right? That's the most success's play on fourth down.
Yeah. That's what I hear.
Most of the time, that is the best option.
Yeah. So there's the stakes are really high on this. Are you seeing this already? The guys have been in the industry a while and aren't necessarily current. They're just kind of, we'll see what happens. I'm not really going to be proactive at all.
I've seen that a little bit so far. Some of them have reached out, some of them have not. Also, some that I know that have a nice book of business that are on level 2, level 3, I've tried to be proactive to them and reach out and say, hey, did you get that list earlier this summer? This is getting ready to go into effect in a month. And, just trying to be proactive to get them to make sure, hey, you guys updated this, right? Because they're going to come, ask me what happened, and I want to make sure I'm providing all this information before we get there. So,
I'm trying to save your life. Will you please respond to my email?
Yeah, and most of them are being pretty proactive, but we're all learning this at the same time. So Visa hasn't came out and said exactly what they want to see as far as what to be submitted and exactly how they want to see it on transaction to transaction. We believe it's going to be accuracy of data. So we just want to see, even if it may be repeat data, like Lumberyard, for example. Well, if you're going to sell, a bundle of 2x4s and everything's going to be measured by the foot and it's all going to be the same commodity code over and over and over again, that may get flagged, but it's okay, well, I'm going to submit with the most accurate information I can. It was true that that's what it was, so that's what we're going to submit it as. So that's what we've been trying to teach people to go forward to, but here in a couple months, I'm sure we're going to learn some more information that may change a little bit, as far as what Visa's looking for exactly.
Sure. So Dawson, you did a good job of teeing up, how we process those cards and what sort of platforms we can use to take advantage of that pricing. So let's talk about the cards. Does that matter what type of cards that the customer's actually using to pay the merchant?
It does. So there's about 5 or 6 card types on both Visa and MasterCard. So it's on the Visa side, it's your Visa commercial prepaid / purchasing cards, which that's the one that most people are familiar with. It's also where GSA cards are going to go, because the government spending account cards fall into that category, which is awesome. The other ones, the main ones that are on there, I believe it's Visa, I have them in my notes, the Visa corporate / purchasing card, and business tiers 1 through 5. So business tier 1, business tier 2, and all the way up till 5. And on MasterCard, it's MasterCard business debit, and also the business level 1 through 5. Large market credit, and commercial prepaid.
So
It's very
How's
small
the merchant
segment.
supposed to know any of this?
You don't really. When you accept the cards, you're not going to know one
Okay.
card from the other because they all look the same, right? They just look like a credit
Yep.
card.
Yep.
So how you're going to know is the rep in the industry should be able to look at the statement and be able to recognize some of those pretty fast, right? Now, you may not get them all 100% on the first try, but you just have to be able to recognize a small handful of card types. And then I'm still old school to where I like to have a pen, right? And I want to be able to mark on it or take a highlighter and put my hands on the statement. So that way I feel like I can help understand what the statement has on it.
I know, unbelievably, this has been a barrier to commerce for reps in the past. They see that as an insurmountable wall to scale that, I've got to look at this statement and figure that out. And I mean, really, it's a small thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very small. And it's like, I don't have, as you saw, I checked my notes on it. I don't have all the names memorized specifically, but I can go on there and I can pick most of them out pretty quickly without having to fact check what the exact name was. And, good news, bad news is the names are changing again for those card types. So it's like part of the new rules that are coming out. They're changing some of the rates and some of the rules. The good part is the rates are getting a little bit lower in some aspects, which is good. But then they're also going to implement like an additional fee, which nobody's surprised by for, the AI program.
It really got my attention. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago. We had a rep from our rep from Visa came in and talked to Alan and me. And Visa, like other companies, is they're seeing what their new markets are. They pretty much have 100% penetration in retail and restaurant, right? So gas stations, everything you think about, like pretty much everywhere I shop, they take a credit card. So there's a lot of places I don't spend money where there's a lot of money being spent. So what Visa had, where they're six and there's a catch, they got a catchphrase and a slogan or a tagline for everything, but effectively it was their emerging markets. Okay, so their top 6 emerging markets. So business to business transactions, of course, was number 1, and it was double of what the next 5 were combined.
Yeah. I feel
Double.
I feel like the government spending accounts have also like escalated that too for Visa. So like looking at those, since all of those are falling into like the purchasing card category.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just skyrocketing all the time. We have some accounts that, only work with the government spending account cards. And since they've went to that, which is good, so that way it's easier for the government to track them. But like all of that going through there is just huge. In terms of volume, it's just massive. And there's multiple different kinds of merchants that work with those accounts. Like a lot of them work in like software and, automated systems and stuff like that. And there's just a ton of money in it right now.
I know that banks are getting more aggressive about pushing these P cards, purchasing cards out through as a treasury product to their customers. What sort of competition are you seeing on the ground level, if any, between Visa and MasterCard?
To my knowledge, not very much. Like Visa and MasterCard still hold like the large majority of the market, and like in the business to business side especially, like even more so than the consumer side. But it depends on the type of merchant, it depends on the market too. So sometimes, I see some statements where it's like 90% MasterCard. Then the next statement could be like 90% Visa. But then if you're looking at like a restaurant and travel and entertainment, you're going to see a lot more American Express than a lot of things. So it's going to vary depending on the merchant. But like on the B2B side, it's just Visa and MasterCard for most of it.
So for example, you could find a merchant and you look at their statement and you're seeing that their B2B is MasterCard. Well, that could be because there's a dominant local bank in that market and that's their P card, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Same thing in there when you're looking at like different subject, but if you're looking at merchants with smaller average ticket, you're concerned about, what's this cost of debit card acceptance. Regulated debit's awesome because it's 5 basis points and 22 cents per item, which almost everybody has memorized, but like that's the cheapest one you can take until you get to a small enough average ticket, which it comes down to what kind of banks they have in their area.
Yeah.
So that's determined by the card issuing bank if they have under over 10 billion in assets. So like your larger banks, if you have a lot of like Chase banks and PNCs and stuff in the area, in bigger cities, you're going to have more of those regulated debit cards versus if you're in, rural areas with a bunch of small towns and community credit unions, you're going to have a lot more, non-regulated debit. So I feel like that's something that's very interesting. People don't talk about much either. It's like even outside of like the B2B world and even in, the debit card world, it's still very relevant.
You see any like product differences between Visa and MasterCard that might sway a merchant or I shouldn't say a merchant, that someone who's using a P card, why they might want to use MasterCard over Visa or the reverse of that?
I haven't noticed any that were, like, especially on the B2B side, for like using Visa versus MasterCard, because I feel like they do very similar things.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like especially between like the four big card brands there, like Visa and MasterCard, if one does something, the other one follows.
Yeah.
A lot of times. So like very, very few differences. I mean, I feel like it'd come down to like if they had different rewards programs.
Yeah.
That would be about it for the consumer level.
It's definitely a clubby relationship. You know, we've I know you're aware of this, but we've run in situations where we get directly contradictory and conflicting rules on how to handle a situation with Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah.
And you know, when I first got in the industry, that was a thing, right? But what we found out very quickly is MasterCard's kind of ceded all that frontline battle work to Visa, and then how it comes out, if there's courts involved or whatever, MasterCard is just falling in space behind them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I feel like even, it was a couple years ago, and I can't remember which court it was in, but there was like this big lawsuit. I think it was one of the federal cases, like this lawsuit against Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah.
About something about like how their interchange rates move, and I'm like, yeah, don't poke the bear, right? And like, I was just seeing like clips of, like little clips of it, like just shortened up, because it was like hours and hours and hours long of like just boring questions, them just getting like asked questions by Congress all the time. And what they would do is they would just be like, oh, no, it's the cost of acceptance. But they didn't have answers to a lot of these questions either about like how they came up with these numbers for like interchange rates and stuff. And it's like, a lot of times people do feel like it's an arbitrary number, right? And then the other one, like if one card brand would answer, the other one would basically give the exact same answer, and they would just give dummy answers essentially. So I find it very interesting that even in that situation, they just kind of follow each other blindly.
I think like being an attorney for Visa, for me personally anyway, would be like one of the more fun jobs you could ever have, because you know your executives who aren't necessarily on the ground level, you know, they're pushing for new programs, and they don't necessarily care about legal constraints or regulations, you know. And as an attorney, I just look at them and say, hey, you know, do you like the prospect of being under the scrutiny of Congress?
Yeah, it would never be boring, you know.
I feel like I would win like some number approaching 100% of the arguments just by dropping that out there.
You would win the argument, but I don't think you'd win the war.
Probably not. Just end it for that moment.
Yeah.
So Dawson, let's talk on the merchant side. So, you know, obviously there's cost savings. Are there things beyond that when a merchant implements a solution, benefits that they're going to realize?
Not really. The large majority of it's the cost is the main reason. But like outside of that, I've never really seen any additional benefits to it.
Okay.
In the world of, I haven't really looked and tried to cross compare it in the world of chargebacks or anything, but also your B2B transactions, your risk of the transaction has dropped a lot. So like your B2B merchants have a lot less chargebacks anyway, but I haven't seen any difference as far as like a significance there.
So that's always going to be the animating motivation here, is that cost savings. And then of course, with your products you represent, is you're gonna give them things like text to invoice, email invoicing, a payments platform that's gonna take payments 24/7, and you're going to find a lot of efficiency pickups. But that's more of a function of the platform than the level 3
of the actual product itself. And like we're offering that on like all merchants, so it's not like it's anything that's specific to just B2B merchants.
Yeah.
But I feel like the important part is finding like opening a way to open a new door for that merchant. So whether it's like introducing a payment link, right, to someone who's traditionally had a terminal, and be like, okay, well, would it be beneficial for you to just send out a text to pay link if someone can't make it there to pay you on time that day?
Yeah.
That way you don't have to stay 30 minutes late, right? How often does that happen each time per week? When they could be taking inventory or cleaning their shop or spending time with their family, right? That's what makes it relevant to the merchants.
Yeah, you're taking away that grungy work that's not rewarding and no one wants to do.
Yep.
Dawson, I heard you talk about this. You've got an interesting viewpoint on how level 3 can affect sales teams and organizations in terms of referrals and associations.
I feel like the referral method is the best way to look at level 3, because these merchants are super hard to cold call because they're always super busy, right? Because your contractors, like anything within blue collar trades, or if it involves new construction or any type of like industrial sector, those merchants are so hard to get a hold of, right? So you have to basically get an in with somebody, and whether it's someone that a merchant you're already working with, work a referral out of them, or have a association refer you, whether it's a builder association or a plumbing association or something like that. Those are the ways that you can get your foot in the door with these merchants. And that referral is a lot warmer than the cold call 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely it is. So we're in a race to the bottom industry, unfortunately, and we're already seeing this with dual pricing and surcharging. So when a rep gets spun up on this, this is pretty seductive, right? I mean, these cost savings are substantial. Mm-hmm. So I know that a lot of reps, their knee-jerk reaction is as well, I'm going to pass 100% of this cost reduction on to the merchant, and I'm going to give them all this new functionality, which it doesn't really seem like, if you're doing that, like you're being compensated for your effort. So this is a long-winded question, but I should have been a congressman. Mm-hmm. But so if you're coaching a rep up and they're trying to figure this out, how would you encourage them to think about what their pricing strategies are?
Mm-hmm. I see that's one of my hot takes on the subject is the pricing strategy is almost always that you should be at the same rate or a higher rate than what they're at today. And like what I'm saying by that is, let's say they take 50% of them are B2B cards, and you're going to save 70 basis points on that. So average savings, it would average out to roughly 35 basis points. So that's what your savings is right there, right? Nothing that comes out of your pocket. So let's say they're currently at 20 basis points. Well, now you can take them up a few basis points and they're still going to save money. So if they're 20, you take them to 30, you're still going to save them 25 basis points across their entire, across the monthly volume. So there's a lot of ways that you can find ways to get revenue back into it just by adding these benefits. And like if you're finding the ways to add these too, it's not like you're just trying to stack fees on the merchant, like you're adding additional value to them. Right. You're getting them a new gateway, and a lot of times if you can do it and get them a new feature out of the gateway too, you can increase your price a little bit, right? Know your worth. Don't just go to 10 basis points and 10 cents on everything.
So I'm working this into a talk track with my merchant. So what I'm going to do with the merchant is I'm going to generate that interest by saying that by taking these cards, you qualify for a lower rate, which is going to be significant. Yeah. Then probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot to how they're processing payments today, and I'm going to look for ways to make it more efficient, them to collect their money quicker, right, which is always important. And then I'm going to weigh that against what their cost savings is and how I'm going to split that up.
Exactly. Okay. A lot of times people pitch it as it's good news, bad news. Bad news is my product is a touch more expensive than what you're used to. Good news is we're going to speed up how you get paid. You have these new functionalities in your gateway. You have the option to also pay by ACH with us now. So in the long term, you're still going to save money and you're going to get paid faster. Yeah. It's just for the gateway itself, it's just a little bit more expensive than what you're used to.
There's a really straightforward, effective playbook to be had here.
Yeah, and all these merchants don't like any of the nonsense either. Like they just shoot them straight.
Yeah, speak to me in English.
Exactly. Lay it out super simple. Mm-hmm. Don't use industry-specific verbiage. Just use very generic terms when you talk to the merchants about it. Because if you get into all the fancy words and the acronyms that we have, it's going right over their head.
I got when I first got in the industry that we've done a lot of level 2 and level 3 stuff, right? And I was kind of embarrassed because I'm like 3 months in, I was in a sales presentation. I'm like, I kind of knew what level 2 and level 3 was, but I certainly couldn't define it, right? Yeah. And then I saw really what this looks like. There's a certain rep never said level 2, level 3. Mm-hmm. What they talked about was business cards and P cards. Well, businesses know what that means. Again, I'm speaking the language where you speak it, right, and what you speak.
Exactly.
So it's really, really important.
And if it's too technical, they throw up the barrier.
Yeah.
Right.
No one cares how smart I am, right? No. They just want to be able to communicate with me. So that's a real problem in our business. So Dawson, if you're coaching up a rep on this, this is I talk about hunting and fishing a lot. You fish where the fish are. So if I'm a rep, where do I fish for these very rich fisheries of these merchants that are level 3 prospects?
Well, I will tell you, I have different outlooks on life on that between fishing and looking at these merchants, because I'm a fisherman too. So whenever you're fishing, 90% of the fish are in 10% of the body of water, right? I'm sure you've heard that statistic.
Yeah.
Well,
but where is that 10% though?
that's the tricky part, right? But when you look at these for B2B merchants, the good part is they're in almost every town in America. Like we live in, the Evansville, Indiana market, but like we both live outside of Evansville, right? So if you look at those markets, that's where a lot of these great merchants are. So any construction company or a trucking company or, anybody who's building new houses. I mean, the road right next door building here at work, I'm sure there's been 2 or 3 big contractors drive by in the last 30 minutes since we've been on this podcast, right? Because they're constantly building something out here. And all of those merchants, there's a middleman selling parts, whether it's plumbing supply parts, it's a lumber yard, there's that landscaper that's down the road. It's actually one of our merchants right next to the office.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are selling to all these big contractors that are doing the landscaping too. So they're the middleman once again. A lot option for ACH or B2B cards happening.
Big ticket, high volume.
Exactly. And you know what? Whether they want to pass the fee or not pass the fee, most of the time it doesn't matter to them. And those are all your great merchants. They're everywhere, but they're kind of hidden too. So like the industrial merchants are the ones you drive by every day, but if you don't have a direct use for working with them, you may not notice them.
Right.
So, but there's a ton of them around here, like in our specific area. But even if you like notice the ones that are specific to you in your area, and then whenever you go out of town or you drive an hour outside of your town where you're not as familiar with the businesses, look for those too. What do those trucks say when you're sitting at a stoplight? Oh, it's so-and-so contracting, or it's so-and-so plumbing, it's so-and-so painting, right? And they're putting literally their advertisement on the door of their vehicles, and they're driving past you every day.
Every day.
And they're all over the place.
Give them a
every time in
jingle.
America. It doesn't matter if you're here in the middle of Indiana or if you're in Florida and you're on a vacation home. They're constantly building houses down there too.
I hear that.
New construction, renovations, and everything else. They're literally everywhere.
So tell me about the biggest misconception you hear out there on level 3 processing. What is it the reps just don't get, or they think they know and they're wrong?
A lot of them think that every transaction is going to be ran as level 3. I feel like that's the big misconception. If they find a merchant that does B2B, they expect all of them to go to that lowest rate.
Ooh,
which is
disastrous.
Yes. Or if you send an invoice, the merchant skips their address verification or their CVV, particularly on Visa. If you skip one of those, automatically goes to non-qual. So it really doesn't matter how much data you submit.
Yeah.
If you're skipping the simple steps and you don't have that as a required field that's already built in,
Okay.
then it's one of those where you can downgrade easily. So a lot of people assume that all of them are going to get it automatically, but no, you still have to hit the requirements to get there.
That's a big one. Yeah.
And now with the new rules too, you have a few more requirements to hit, because you're going to have to make sure your line item description's right and your taxes right before you send that out.
That could be a good thing, because let's say I go in there and it's a merchant. I know a lot of these B2B, they're paying $4,000 or $5,000 a month in fees, and I say, hey, I'm going to whack out by 30%. And the merchant's expecting 30% on $5,000, when actually it's going to be 30% maybe on $3,500. You're setting it up for a really disappointing user experience on that.
Yep. And you have to check these too. So it's even when it's set up correctly, your merchant could be failing along the way. So you need to check it after a month or two and look through those statements and see if they're qualifying or not qualifying, and if they're going to data rate 1 or data rate 2.
That's so important, that's a thing that really separates the great reps from the rest of the herd, right? Because people, people got quotas to hit, they got numbers to make, but that going back and making sure that your customer is processing this right, your merchant, that's going to get 2 things. Number one, you're showing them that you care, not just by your words, but by your actions. If they're doing something wrong, you're straightening that out so they realize that savings and they understand that. And then your chance of keeping that customer skyrockets, and the incidence of them referring another merchant to you, because they all deal with businesses themselves that could be prospects of ours. You're just going to get more of those referrals. So,
exactly.
I mean, doing the right thing is not only just its own reward here, but it's literally, there's a new reward for doing it.
Yeah, and the touch point when you go back to them to verify everything's working correctly, which you can verify off the statement about 99% of the time. That 1% is if something's not going correct and you're trying to determine what happened. But if everything's going correct, you can then use that to pitch digital, right?
Right.
And get in the door. And B2B is also where some of your best digital merchants are, because a lot of those businesses want Google ads, right?
Right.
Especially for like your contracting space, your plumbers, your roofers, and Google Guaranteed, or I think they call it local service ads now. But also the Google ads and stuff like that, just to be able to pop first when you look up roofers near me.
Yeah.
You know, those types of merchants want to be first on Google all the time. So the budgets on those are generally pretty good.
And they want to conduct transactions over their website.
Exactly. They don't want
Yeah.
anybody in person.
That's
They
a
just
big
want to be able
deal.
to send invoices and pay them ahead of time, particularly, or at least get a nice deposit ahead of time, and then pay the rest of the invoice later.
So back on your college football theme here,
Mhm.
what do you see as the game-winning play for someone that really wants to be a player in the level 3 space?
There's multiple game-winning plays.
Not just a Hail Mary pass?
Not just the Hail Mary pass. I feel like a lot of them come back to like kind of a air raid offense kind of setup. But what you have to do is be able to get your foot in the door. One, become familiar with the type of merchant you're going to be working with, right? A lot of them are more so, sometimes a little bit rougher, sometimes blue collar kind of setup. So like prepare yourself for that, right? You're not working with an insurance agent. Two very different business types. So like know what you're getting into, and then once you start getting into that network, you have to get those referrals and start getting into that very quickly. You can even get started in it if you're working with a CPA or a bookkeeper, and if they send you those types of merchants, if they work with a couple of them, that's how you could get started. Once you write them as your merchant, leverage them. And I feel like leveraging the referrals is the number one way to use the playbook in this industry, particularly for B2B and the level 3 processing.
Okay.
Referrals, or also known as throw the ball downfield.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. All right, are you fielding personal questions today?
Sure.
Okay. Who do you like this season?
Oh, that's a tough one. Man, after this last weekend too, it was tough because there's a lot of things that change. I'm an Indiana Hoosier fan, first of all.
Oh, you're having some fun then.
So far, yeah, because when we beat Illinois, it was great, right? They were a top 10 team that everybody wanted to say Illinois wasn't really a top 10 team. But then they came out, Illinois beat USC last weekend, so, it's looking better.
Indiana hung a 63 burger on them.
Oh, yeah, it was like 63-10. I mean, it was tough. But it was at home for Indiana. So, then they went on the road to, Iowa, and it was only 20-15 because they, to end the game, took a safety on purpose, ran backwards like 30 or 40 yards to kill the clock so Iowa couldn't get the ball. Interesting way they did it, but at the same time, after the second time I watched the replay, it made sense. So I like Indiana. Will they win the championship? That's a stretch. There's a couple other good teams. I mean, Ohio State's good. I'm not a huge Ohio State fan, but they're good. Penn State's still ranked in the top 5, but I feel like that's going to drop here soon as they play some better teams. In the SEC world, LSU looks really good, even after they lost to Ole Miss, but I think they're still going to look good right now if they get it together on offense and defense and run the ball instead of just trying to pass every single play. So there's a lot that's happened this season already in the college football world. A lot.
Well, being a Hoosier, you're either on one side of the fence or the other. Notre Dame, which side?
Not a Notre Dame fan.
Okay.
I'm not a Notre Dame fan to the point where I was hoping Purdue would beat them the other day because that was when Notre Dame was still, I think, 0-2, but still ranked in the top 25, which didn't make sense to me. So I was hoping that Purdue could get that win, but it did not happen. Notre Dame put it on them. So don't really hate them, but I'm particularly not a Notre Dame fan.
Okay.
So, which is interesting, even in our office here at work, there's a lot of Notre Dame fans that are here. A lot.
So last question here. Actually, This is a comment and a question. Last time we talked, you were in the process of being a first-time homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
Has that come to fruition?
It has. Got a house and closed on it, got immediate possession, and then now just started home renovation.
Fantastic. You're out there in God's country.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Right. We're right on the edge of town in the big town of Boonville, Indiana.
Excellent. Where a young Abraham Lincoln went to the courthouse and studied the law.
Exactly.
When he was 13 years old.
Drive by that. There's a little sign on the way to my house, and it says Boonville, Indiana, where Lincoln learned the law.
Pretty awesome, huh?
It is.
Yeah. Well, Dawson, as always, it is great having you on the show. If you'll agree to it, I know I'm going to have you back sooner rather than later.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. So, folks, don't forget to tune in on Friday for Get Your Mind Right Mailbag Edition, where we got a really fun new segment called The Backstory. But until then, for Dawson Dimmett, I'm John Johnson, and get your mind right.